Most people don't realize this, but the greatest prison you will ever live in is not made of walls. It's made of unanswered questions. Questions like, why am I tired even when my life looks fine on paper? Why do I feel empty even when I'm busy all day? Why does success feel hollow and pain feel meaningless? If you've ever caught yourself staring at the ceiling at night, wondering what all this effort is actually for, then this story is about you. Because when life strips everything away, comfort, certainty, even freedom, one thing decides whether you break or survive. And almost no one is taught what that thing is. Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that every role you thought defined you is gone. Your job, your status, your future plans, even your name, reduced to nothing. No explanation, no justice, just suffering. Most of us like to believe that meaning comes from success, happiness, or achievement. But what happens when none of those are available? What happens when pain is unavoidable and escape is impossible? This is where most people mentally collapse. And this is where the most important lesson about being human begins. The story you're about to hear does not begin with inspiration. It begins with loss, with shock, with the slow realization that life, as you knew it, is over. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, a man trained to understand the human mind, when he was thrown into Nazi concentration camps during World War II. Overnight, his identity vanished. He was no longer a doctor, no longer a husband with plans and dreams. He became a number, a body meant to work, suffer, and eventually disappear. But what makes this story different is not the cruelty of the camps. History has already told us that. What makes it different is what Frankl noticed while living through it. He observed something strange, something deeply unsettling. The people who survived were not always the strongest. They were not always the healthiest. And they were definitely not always the smartest. Some men with powerful bodies collapsed early. Some with sharp intellects lost the will to live. Meanwhile, others, physically weaker, older, seemingly less equipped, somehow endured. This observation haunted him. In a place where death was random and suffering constant, why did some people give up while others held on? At first, survival seemed like a matter of luck, a random selection. But as time passed, a pattern began to emerge. The men who survived longer, who resisted inner collapse, were the ones who had something waiting for them in the future. Not pleasure, not comfort, but meaning. A reason to endure the present moment, no matter how painful it was. Frankl saw men die not because their bodies failed, but because their inner reason to continue disappeared. When hope vanished, the body followed. And this wasn't abstract philosophy, it was observable reality. Prisoners who lost faith in a future goal would suddenly fall sick, stop responding, stop caring. They would lie down and refuse to get up. And within days, they were gone. This is uncomfortable to hear because it contradicts what modern culture teaches us. We are told that happiness comes first and meaning follows. That once you are successful, loved, and comfortable, your life will feel meaningful. But Frankl saw the opposite. Meaning came first, and survival, both physical and psychological, followed. Inside the camps, suffering was not a question of if, but how. Hunger, cold, brutality, loss. These were daily realities. No mindset could remove them. No positive thinking could make them disappear. And yet, Frankl discovered that there was one freedom no guard could take away: the freedom to choose one's attitude towards suffering. This idea sounds simple, almost cliché, until you realize the context. Choosing your attitude while sitting in traffic is easy. Choosing your attitude while being beaten, starved, and stripped of dignity is something else entirely. And yet, Frankl saw people do it. He saw prisoners who shared their last piece of bread, who comforted others despite having nothing themselves, who walked into forced labor with quiet dignity, even knowing they might not survive the day. These moments revealed a brutal truth. Suffering itself does not destroy us. Meaningless suffering does. When pain has no purpose, it becomes unbearable. But when suffering is connected to something larger, something worth enduring for, it becomes survivable, even transformative. Frankl began to understand that humans are not primarily driven by pleasure, as Freud suggested, or power, as Adler believed. Humans are driven by the will to meaning. We want our lives to matter. We want our suffering to count for something. And when that sense of meaning disappears, despair rushes in to fill the void. Think about your own life for a moment. The exhaustion you feel, the boredom, the quiet anxiety. For many people today, the problem is not too much suffering, it's too little meaning. Life becomes comfortable, but empty. Busy, but directionless. And when discomfort arrives, as it always does, it feels intolerable because there's no why strong enough to carry the how. Frankl noticed that even in the camps, people created meaning in different ways. Some imagined reuniting with loved ones. Others committed themselves to completing unfinished work, like writing a book or preserving an idea. Frankl himself survived by holding on to the belief that he would one day rewrite the manuscript of his psychological work, which had been destroyed when he was arrested. That future task gave his suffering direction. It gave it shape. Meaning, he realized, is not something you invent in comfort. It is something you discover under pressure. And here is where the story turns inward. Because Frankl's insights were not meant only for extreme situations. They were meant for everyday life. For moments when life feels pointless, when pain feels unfair, when motivation disappears, when you ask yourself, what's the point of all this? Frankl proposed that meaning can be found in three main ways. First, through work or contribution, creating something, doing something meaningful, giving value to the world. Second, through love, experiencing someone deeply, caring for another human being, seeing them as unique and irreplaceable. And third, through suffering, by choosing how you respond to pain that cannot be avoided. That last one is the hardest to accept, because no one wants suffering to be part of their purpose. But Frankl was clear. When suffering is unavoidable, it still holds the potential for meaning, not because pain is good, but because your response to pain can reveal who you truly are. This idea challenges the modern obsession with comfort. We are taught to eliminate pain at all costs, to numb it, distract from it, escape it. But Frankl warns that when we avoid discomfort entirely, we also avoid growth. And worse, we lose our ability to find meaning when suffering inevitably arrives. Inside the camps, Frankl noticed another dangerous phenomenon: emotional numbing. At first, prisoners reacted with shock and horror. Later, to survive psychologically, they became numb. Death stopped feeling shocking. Cruelty became routine. This emotional dulling protected them in the short term, but it also carried a cost. When everything feels meaningless, even freedom can feel empty. After liberation, many survivors experienced something called post-liberation depression. They had dreamed of freedom for years, and when it finally came, it felt strangely hollow. The suffering ended, but meaning did not automatically return. This revealed another truth. Meaning is not guaranteed by external circumstances. Even freedom requires purpose. Frankl saw men who survived the camps only to collapse afterward because they believed life owed them happiness as compensation for suffering. When reality failed to deliver that happiness, they fell into bitterness. Frankl rejected this mindset. Life does not owe us anything, he argued. Instead, life asks something of us, and our task is to answer that question responsibly. This is a radical shift in perspective. Instead of asking, what do I expect from life? Frankl invites us to ask, what does life expect from me in this moment? That question changes everything. It turns you from a passive victim into an active participant. It gives you agency, even when circumstances are unfair. And it reframes suffering not as a personal failure, but as a challenge that demands a response. Frankl believed that mental health is not about eliminating tension, but about having the right kind of tension. A tension between who you are and who you are meant to become, between your current reality and your future purpose. Without this tension, life feels flat, empty, meaningless. This is why so many people today feel lost, despite having more comfort than any generation before them. When life becomes only about avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, it shrinks. The human spirit, Frankl believed, needs something to strive for, something worth sacrificing for. And this is where responsibility enters the picture. Meaning is not handed to you. It is not found in motivational quotes or quick success. It is discovered through responsibility, through choosing to take ownership of your life, your actions, and your responses, even when circumstances are unfair. Frankl emphasized that every moment presents a unique demand, a unique opportunity to act with dignity, courage, or compassion. And once that moment passes, it is gone forever. Life is not something you can replay, which makes every choice matter. This realization is both terrifying and empowering. Terrifying, because there are no excuses. Empowering, because even in the smallest moments, you still matter. Even when you cannot change your situation, you can change what that situation means about you. As Frankl observed human behavior in the camps, he noticed that suffering stripped people down to, if life is asking something of you right now, the most dangerous response is silence. Because when a person stops answering life's questions, meaning begins to erode. Frankl saw this clearly after the camps, when survivors returned to a world that looked normal on the surface but felt alien inside. Streets were standing. Buildings were intact. People were laughing again. And yet, inside many survivors, something had collapsed. The external prison was gone, but the internal emptiness remained. This is where Frankl's ideas became even more urgent. Because suffering does not automatically ennoble a person. Pain alone does not give wisdom. Without meaning, suffering only hardens or breaks you. Some survivors became bitter, cruel, or numb. Others transformed their suffering into responsibility toward their work, their families, and humanity itself. The difference was not what they endured. It was what they decided their suffering would mean. Frankl warned about a hidden danger that appears when people finally get what they thought they wanted. Success without purpose. Comfort without responsibility. Freedom without direction. When struggle ends and meaning has not been consciously rebuilt, emptiness rushes in. This is why so many people today feel lost after reaching goals they chased for years. The achievement arrives, the applause fades, and an unsettling question appears. Now what? This emptiness has a name. Frankl called it the existential vacuum, a state where life feels dull, repetitive, and meaningless, where distractions replace purpose, where people chase pleasure, power, or validation, not because these things satisfy them, but because silence feels unbearable. Look around, and you can see this everywhere. Endless scrolling, binge-watching, overworking, overeating, overthinking. These are not signs of laziness or weakness. They are symptoms of a deeper hunger, the hunger for meaning. Frankl noticed that when people lack meaning, they become vulnerable to conformity and authoritarian thinking. They want someone else to tell them what to value, how to live, what to believe. Meaninglessness makes people easy to control. When you don't know why you exist, any loud voice offering certainty becomes tempting. This insight is chilling when you realize how relevant it is today. A world flooded with information, opinions, and outrage, but starved of purpose. Frankl's message cuts through this noise with brutal clarity. Your life has meaning, but it is not generic. It cannot be copied from someone else. And it cannot be postponed. Meaning is specific to the moment, to your situation, to your unique responsibilities. Frankl rejected the idea that there is one universal meaning of life. Instead, he argued that life asks different questions of different people at different times. A parent's meaning may be sacrifice. A creator's meaning may be expression. A suffering person's meaning may be endurance with dignity. And what gives life depth is not comfort, but responsibility. Responsibility is not a popular word. It sounds heavy, restrictive, but Frankl believed it was the foundation of freedom. Because when you accept responsibility for your response to life, you reclaim control, even when circumstances are unfair. He often emphasized that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your power to choose. And in that choice lies your growth. This space may be tiny, barely noticeable, but it exists, and no one, not trauma, not fear, not other people, can fully take it from you. This idea is deeply empowering if you allow it to be. It means your past does not decide your future. Your pain does not define your identity. Your circumstances do not own your character. You always have the ability to decide who you become next. Frankl also challenged the obsession with happiness. Happiness, he argued, cannot be pursued directly. The more you chase it, the more it slips away. Happiness emerges as a side effect of meaning. When you commit yourself to something greater than your own comfort, fulfillment follows naturally. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, truly alive. They were probably not the easiest moments. They likely involved effort, risk, responsibility, maybe even sacrifice, but they mattered. And because they mattered, they stayed with you. This is why Frankl believed that asking, "What makes me happy?" is the wrong starting point. A better question is, "What is worth my effort, even when it's hard?" Because that question points you toward meaning instead of pleasure. Another powerful insight from Frankl's work is the idea of self-transcendence. Humans find fulfillment not by obsessing over themselves, but by reaching beyond themselves, toward work, love, service, or values that demand something from them. This explains why excessive self-focus often leads to anxiety and depression. When your entire world revolves around your feelings, your mood becomes fragile. Every setback feels catastrophic. But when your attention is directed outward toward contribution, your inner state stabilizes. Frankl observed that people who had a clear why could endure almost any how. This was not motivational talk. It was survival logic, meaning acted like psychological oxygen. Without it, the mind suffocated. And here's the uncomfortable part. Meaning cannot be given to you, not by a book, not by a video, not by a teacher. These can point the way, but you must walk it. Meaning demands participation. It demands decision. This is why Frankl's philosophy is not comforting in the traditional sense. It does not promise an easy life. It does not guarantee happiness. What it offers instead is something far more powerful, a reason to stand upright even when life is unfair. As the story moves toward its final realization, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Life's meaning is not found in avoiding suffering, but in responding to it with courage. Not in controlling everything, but in choosing your attitude when control is gone. Frankl believed that even unavoidable suffering contains a hidden task, a demand for growth, for character, for depth. And when you meet that demand, suffering changes you, but it does not destroy you. Now, this does not mean seeking pain. It does not mean glorifying hardship. It means refusing to let pain be meaningless. And this brings us to the practical question that matters most. How do you apply this in your own life? Start here. Stop asking what you want from life and begin asking what life is asking from you right now. In your current situation, not an imaginary future. What responsibility is in front of you? What task needs doing? What value needs defending? Next, identify one area where you can create or contribute. It does not need to be grand. Meaning grows from commitment, not scale. Write, build, learn, help. Do something that leaves the world slightly better than you found it. Then, look at your relationships. Who needs your presence? Not your perfection, but your attention. Love, in Frankl's view, is one of the deepest sources of meaning. To truly see another person is to affirm that life is worth engaging with. Finally, examine your suffering, not with self-pity, but with honesty. What pain are you carrying that cannot be changed right now? If it cannot be removed, then it must be transformed. Ask yourself, what kind of person does this suffering invite me to become? This is not easy work. It requires courage. It requires responsibility, but it also restores something many people have lost. The feeling that your life is not random, that your struggles are not pointless, that you are not merely drifting through time. Frankl's message is ultimately a message of quiet strength. You may not control what happens to you, but you control the meaning you give it. And that meaning can turn survival into purpose, pain into depth, and existence into something worth enduring. So when life feels heavy, when motivation fades, when the question, "What's the point?" whispers in your mind, remember this. Life is still asking something of you. And as long as you can answer, your life still has meaning. Not someday. Not when things get easier. Now, would you like me to help you create a set of reflection questions or a practical meaning-finding exercise based on this text?